You know I'm right. Nick Durst here with Joe Calabrese. And Joe, it's not often that our guest is baseball royalty, but that is exactly what we have here today with us.
Yes, he is the descendant of baseball royalty. His father was Hall of Famer Tony Perez. His godfather was Hall of Famer Orlando Cepeda. Uh, People will probably best know him for his work at ESPN. He's been a Baseball Tonight in studio now, analyst. I'm sorry, for more than a couple of years now. He's Baseball Tonight this year. He returned in 2014. He's a good friend of our good friend Tim Kirkchin. You could also have heard him on Sirius throughout the years. We're really excited to have him on. Eduardo Perez. Good morning, Eduardo. How are you doing today?
Oh, well, it's a pleasure to be here with you guys. Thanks a lot for having me. And I have to correct you. I have to correct you on two mistakes you put in there, and all with one word, and it's the was part of it. They still are. So I would say is Hall of Famer as far as my dad and Orlando Cepeda, Tony Perez and Orlando Cepeda. They are. Fortunately, they're still with us, and they've. They're my heroes. My dad's definitely my hero. My mom is a Hall of Famer as well, because she was the one that guided not only my father but my brother and I to do well in our lives. And then my godfather Orlando Cepeda, who continues to just amaze me on a daily basis. So I'm fortunate to have grown up in this sport and been able to still make a living after my abilities of not being able to run out ground balls and hit fly balls and catch balls. Baseball is a major part of our lives.
Let's be fair. You played the better part of 13 years. Even if you weren't a consistent everyday player, you were still reaching the majors, and that's still a major accomplishment. And my apologies to you. You are absolutely correct. But still, right. Yeah.
Don't worry, you're not the first that I correct doing that. It's the first thing I listen to always when people say was or is. That's why I busting your chops with it from the get-go. But again, yeah, it was awesome. It's been an awesome ride that baseball has been able to provide our family. And if it wasn't for the game, as I said, I wouldn't be here, because it was the game of baseball that took my dad to Puerto Rico to meet my mom. And even though they're both Cuban, that's where they met during winter baseball. And 5 months later, they were married. And a year later, my brother was born. And 4 years later, I was born. So again, grateful, and we owe a lot to the game to the sport.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We're going to talk about your career here. But first, I was told you have to ask Eduardo about the joke that Tim Kirkchin told him, Adnan Virk, and Joe Madden about the Pope and a woman at the Vatican. So hopefully that's a clean joke, but
man, look, Tim's a friend of the show, right?
Yes.
He is one of, if not, I want to say one of the top storytellers I've ever come across. And I butcher jokes. I am bad at it. And I am not going to give you my version, because if I do, I'm going to butcher it. And I'm not going to fall into that one. I will tell you this. It's a great joke. I don't know if it was Tim that told you a little sneak peek of it, but I'm not going to butcher it, because Tim says it better than anyone. He really does.
All right, so there we go, Joe. We'll have to ask Tim to tell it next time we have him on with us. So, yeah, Tim, great storyteller. He always comes with a good story or a joke for us. But we were just talking about your childhood and whatnot. What was it like, as a kid, being able to spend time at a major league ballpark whenever you got the opportunity to do so?
That was pretty much every year of my life growing up, and I was blessed. I was blessed to have been born in Cincinnati, and then during the summers, once we started school, that's where we would spend our afternoons at the ballpark. We would go with my dad to the ballpark when they were at home. We would stay, obviously, when they were on the road trips, but listen to always the 700 WOW calls. Marty Brenneman and Joe Nuxall, those were the voices of radio that I listened to growing up. And I learned so much being at the ballpark, and I learned just as much listening to the game was on the radio. But it was really cool, because unfortunately for the Cincinnati Reds and in the dynasty that the Cincinnati Reds were in the 70s, when my dad got traded after 76, we went on to Montreal. At that time, I was 7, going to be 8 years old, that year. And I did not know in 1977 much about Montreal. All I knew is that the Olympics were in 1976 and that they had moved from Jerry Park to Olympic Stadium, Stade Olympique. And I was going to be going to school there. And to me, we were all nervous. My brother and I were nervous about it, but we were really independent. And it really was very friendly for kids, as far as being able to go to the ballpark, not as early as my dad, but still early enough that we would be able to enjoy batting practice. And then right after batting practice, we would have our swim trunks underneath our jeans. And they were tight as heck. I'm telling you, we had some baggy pants. And we would go underneath the tunnel system that connected the Olympic Stadium with the Olympic swimming facility. So we would end up in the swimming pool until maybe the first pitch of the game. So it was great. We would take the train, we would take the subway, the metro station to the P-Nuff station. That was the exit for the Olympic Stadium. And we would be there. And as soon as they finished hitting and the visiting team started hitting, we would head off to the swimming pools. And that was our childhood for like 3 years in Montreal before heading out to Boston for another 3 years and Philadelphia for 1 year that my dad played in the Phillies in 1983. And then that was the first year that I was able to wear a uniform and be shagging with the players, and then also being in the dugout during the games with the players. And that's when I really fell in love with the game more than ever, because I was able to be, quote unquote, a big leaguer with a big uniform, even though I did not have Perez 24 on my back. I had BB on my back. And that boy sign I wasn't too fond of, but at least I was able to be in that clubhouse and in that dugout during the games.
So you're with your father, a lot of days throughout the season. He's a Hall of Famer. He is a Hall of Famer, Joe. But
nice. He is a Hall of Famer.
When did you and when did your father really realize that, hey, Eduardo, you might actually have the potential here to be drafted and be in the major leagues one day?
My junior year in college. Again, I didn't play much baseball on teams. I never did travel teams. I wasn't on the radar as far as the draft in the US. Living in Puerto Rico, we were still not part of the draft. So but either if you signed, you had a free agent signee, just like they are in the Dominican Republic and in most Latin American countries. So we did not fall into the draft scope. All I knew is this: my parents prepared my brother and I to go to a private American school, a college prep school in Puerto Rico. We went to different high schools, but yet both of them were door to door with each other. They were, everybody was expected to go to college. That was what it was all about. I applied to the University of Miami as a regular student, not knowing what went into the recruiting process or anything like that when it comes to athletes in college. I just thought maybe I'll just try out for the team, and maybe I'm good enough to make the team, and at least I'll have a group that I can hang out with while I get my education at the University of Miami. I got into the University of Miami, but at that time, I also played a lot of basketball, and I had a lot of offers for smaller basketball, for smaller schools to play basketball, and I was pretty darn good at it, I thought, for Puerto Rico. That being said, I ended up, one day basketball practice got canceled. My parents were in the States, and I decided to go to the batting cages and put a couple tokens in and just hit some baseballs. It's something my brother and I would always do during the summer in Cincinnati. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this in Puerto Rico. So I went up to a town called Guaynabo, and as I'm hitting in the cages and I put some tokens in, there's this kid, and I will never forget his name. His name is Jesval Acevedo. He came up to me and he goes, "What team do you play for?" And I said, "I don't play for a team. I play basketball. I'm just here swinging the bat." And he goes, and mind you, this is my senior year in high school. And he told me, "Hey, what should I do?" He goes, "Oh, I would love for you to come and play for our team. What position do you play?" I was like, I play all over. I can play short, I can play third, I can play outfield." He goes, "We need outfielders." why don't you, come to our practice? He explained to me where it was in Las Lomas, Puerto Rico. I had no idea where that was. He said, you'll receive a call from one of our coaches. I did receive a call later that night from a coach that said, we practice on Thursdays, we play on Saturdays. It never interfered with as long as it doesn't interfere with my basketball, I'm good to go, or with my schoolwork. So I showed up at practice on Thursday, played in a game, center field, on Saturday, played for 3 weeks there, then stayed with them. But at the third week, I get a call from Luis Rosas, who had signed Ozzie Guillen in the past, and the Alomar brothers, and Baerga, and Juan Gonzalez. I can go on and on. Ruben Sierra. He was with the Padres, then the Rangers. So all those Puerto Rican and Latino players from the Caribbean he had signed. And he called me and he said, I want you to play for our Raiders team. And he goes, I want to sign you afterwards. And I said, no, I don't want to sign. I have to go to college. My dad wants me to go to college. And I know this is a long story, but it's an interesting story where he then tells me, I'll get you to a college. Lo and behold, 3 weeks after that, Rod Delmonico from Florida State calls, trying to speak and attempting to speak Spanish to me. I thought it was a joke. He says, I want you to come down to Florida State. And I had no idea where Tallahassee was at the time. He goes, next week we have a game. I want you to come for the 48-hour visit, end up in Tallahassee on the visit. And I was like, let me get this straight. I come here, you pay for my education? He goes, well, we'll pay for half of your education. I said, good enough for me. Ended up going to Florida State, the only school that ever recruited me in baseball. 3 years later, I got drafted in the first round. I was not a prospect until halfway through my junior year.
So you mentioned your strong season, your junior season at Florida State. You were second team All-American, and you were drafted 17th overall by the then California Angels. Now they're known as Los Angeles Angels. So I wanted to ask, what do you think are the biggest primary differences between the preparation, players getting drafted and ready out of college versus ready out of high school, or even now that we've seen the blossoming, booming business of international free agents? I think we're seeing a lot of organizations dedicate a lot more financial resources, more so in the past, to these international free agents and recruiting, people who are in your position before they even reach the high school and college level here in the States. We've seen that recently with players such as like Yoan Moncada, who plays for the White Sox. So talk us through the differences that you see there.
Oh, there's major differences. I think this is a two-part question. And if you want to talk about what baseball is now, as far as information with the analytics and the data and the resources that a lot of these major colleges have with deep pockets to be able to have the data for the college pitcher, the college position player, the exit velocity, the strength. You can go with there's so many tools that you can't go wrong with either signing out of high school and going professional, or signing out of college and wanting the experience of going to college, which I'm a big advocate of. Because you don't miss that many steps. It took me 2.5 years to go from signing professionally to getting to the big leagues. We're seeing this on a daily basis now, where pitchers and position players sign, and 2 years later out of college, and 2 years later they're in the big leagues. We've seen it. If it's on both ends of the base, it used to be most with pitchers that were well developed. Sometimes they would skip and go straight to the big leagues. At the same time, we're seeing a lot of development at the international side, but we have to be more patient there, because there's an expected outcome coming out of college, out of the Latin American product, where all the organizations have academies in the Dominican Republic. They're putting and investing a lot of resources into those academies. And the players, when they sign, they're usually 16 years of age. So there's a maturity process that you have to be patient, because they're still not physically developed, and yet mentally they're still behind. So you have to educate them as far as what the technology means. And let's not forget the language barrier. You also, the language and culture barrier that goes along with it, because a lot of people think it's just about, does he speak English or not? I think that is not as important as knowing and understanding the cultural difference once that player gets to the United States, sets foot, graduates from the Dominican Academy, is able to get to a spring training facility in Florida or Arizona, and then understands the culture. And that's the part where sometimes a lot of players fizzle out because they don't get that, lost in translation. And then once you're able to do that, yes, then the language comes within. That's why I'm very impressed with like a Juan Soto, who not only can make the adjustment on the hitting side of it, but also on the language and on the cultural side of it. Ronald Acuna Jr. still doesn't know how to speak English well. The bat does the speaking for him. And what he does, he pays attention and he understands the cultural aspect of it all.
Yeah, it's very tough transition. A lot of people think, oh, he signed at 16. Why isn't he in the majors at 20? But it's a lot more than that. And like you mentioned, it's a physical thing. And when guys come out of college, they're pretty much closer to their physical prime. I think of like Michael Conforto, who went basically 1 year in the minors. Pete Alonso instantly came to the majors and was able to hit. Those are the two most recent guys that I can think of. So it definitely worked out for you. What was your reaction when you found out that the Angels are drafting you? The draft isn't what it is today, with you guys broadcasting it. And really, honestly, when they told you you're going to go to Boise to play for the Boise Hawks, did you say, where the heck is Boise?
It's interesting because first when I received the call, we had just gotten eliminated by the Florida Gators. I won't say that twice, as I'm a Seminole. In the College World Series, we had landed in Tallahassee. It was draft day. I received a phone call, and I had a separate line in my bedroom. No cell phones back then, guys. And I was expected, and I heard a lot of rumors about me going to the Mets and being the 18th overall pick. And I was like, okay, the Mets, here we go. Let's go New York, no problem. I'm all in. All of a sudden, I get a call and it says, "Hi, I'm Tom Couchman, and you've been drafted by the California Angels, Eddie." And I'm like, wait, what? What just happened here? And I'm going west. That's the first thing that I thought of when I did it. I was excited. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I was not a top 100 collegiate prospect starting that season. I'm not even adding the high schoolers to this. So to be able to crack all that and be able to get into the first round, and I thought was a strong draft year that year with a lot of hitters and good arms, I was honored. It didn't really matter where it was. All I knew is I had to Tom Kochman, who had drafted us and actually was the scout, the Florida scout, also that shadowed the Florida State Seminoles a lot. He was excited. And the best part about it is I had Koch, who is also Casey Kochman's dad, as my manager in Boise, Idaho. So I didn't have to try to play my game any different. Once I got to Boise after holding out for, I think it was 3 weeks after the draft, he goes, just do what you've been doing all along. Don't try to change, have fun, play the game, and just do what you were doing at Florida State and you'll be fine. And what rules you had there is the rules you're going to have there in Boise. And I was fortunate to play with guys that were really good collegiate players that now were playing professionally for the Boise Hawks, including Mark Sweeney, and Chris Pritchett, Troy Percival was on that team first year as a closer. Sean Purdy, who played for the University of Miami, was one of our starters. Just so many good quality people, and we ended up winning the championship that year in Boise, Idaho. The biggest adjustment that I could not make was the host family had loaned me a pickup truck, and it was standard, and I did not know how to drive anything that was not automatic. And I really struggled in a major way getting up and down those hills driving, but I was able to get a roommate in Orlando Palmero, and I made him the designated driver.
There you go. A lot of legendary players there for the Boise Hawks. You mentioned it. You went through the system relatively quickly. Then the next year you're playing for the Palm Spring Angels of the California League. You get promoted to the Midland Angels of the Texas League. 1993, you're then back in Canada playing in Vancouver, which I always thought that would be a cool spot for a major league team one day. But what was that process like for you? Were you surprised at all how quickly you were going through the system?
I was, because during the last week of instructional ball, after my first year in Boise, after the year in Boise, the last week of instruction was 6 weeks long back then. I was approached by Eddie Rodriguez and Joe Madden, as a matter of fact, and they said, and Billy Bavasi, who was the farm director, and said, we want you to try out third base for the last week of instructional. I played 4 games at third. I think I made like 6 errors or 7. And they said, that's where you're going to play next year. We like it. Eddie Rodriguez said, I can make you into a decent third baseman, if you allow yourself. And I said, if it gets me to the big leagues quicker, I'm in. And they said, we don't have a prospect at third base. Your bat would work. This is something that could work. Went to Palm Springs as a third baseman. First hard shot that was hit there made this weird sound that I had never heard before as the ball was coming towards me, and I just Olin'd and got out of the way. I was like, whoa, what is this? Now I understand what the hot corner is about. I have not seen any of those ground balls in the backfields or anything like that, or during the games that I had played. But I think the game-changing moment for me that changed my path was in Palm Springs during batting practice one day. We had drills that you do, hit the ball over to the other side, hitting runs, bunt 2 balls, and then at the end squeeze, and the coach throws it wherever it may be, and you have to bunt it down on the ground. The ball came towards me. I put the bat in front of me. It hit my left eyeball, and I lost my eyesight in the left eye. I ended up having traumatic cataract I ended up having a detached retina. I ended up having a torn muscle in the eye, and I could not see very well out of the left eye. And that hurt me because now it's my lead eye, my left eye. I couldn't really pick up spin that well. That being said, I struggled going from Palm Springs, where I had been hitting like 360, ended up hitting, I think it was 314. And then I ended up getting moved to Midland, Texas. Midland, Texas really struggled. I think I had 230 that year there. Didn't really hit the ball hard. I think I had 3 home runs during that time. And the wind was always blowing in left to right. Just could not pick up right-handed pitching, spin. And those were night games, and it would get night pretty early down there. So I really struggled under the lights. Went to Vancouver, and Vancouver wouldn't get dark until like 9 o'clock. It was great. It was like playing day games all the time. I could see the ball better. The cataract did not affect me as much. And because of it, I was actually, I had a pretty darn good season there in Vancouver before getting called up to the big leagues. Defensively, not ready yet, but at least offensively, I thought, I just made it to the big leagues. I can have a really good impact on that. But I think Vancouver helped me because it just seemed like I was playing day games the entire time. And it's a secret that I had for a long time with my eye and the cataract.
It's incredible to know that you're able to overcome that, and you get called up for your first major league game, July 27, 1993. What do you remember about being told you're going to the majors? And for people that don't know, Eduardo had a pact here with his brother that no matter what, if he made it to the major leagues, he would swing at the first pitch. And the pitch was about 1.5 feet over the plate. He still ends up walking in the at-bat, so 5 balls really there. How'd you explain that to your teammates or your coach after the fact?
Well, they didn't know me that well because I had never been in spring training with the Angels at the major league spring training. I was always in the minor league side. So a lot of coaches and a lot of the players had never seen me. They didn't know what to expect. All I knew is that I couldn't feel my legs. And I remember my brother telling me the night before, don't forget, you're going to swing the first pitch. And he couldn't make it out that day. So I had no family in the stands. He made it out the next day. And I was grateful for him to be able to get there. When I got called up, and I'm going to backtrack a little bit, we were in Scottsdale playing the Giants in Arizona. And Max Oliveras was our manager. And he called in Ty Van Berkeley. And he told me, he goes, Eddie, can you get Ty for me? Come on in. I want you to witness something really cool. And I was really tight with Max Oliveras because he was also my manager in Puerto Rico during winter ball. And he was, he was my manager in AAA, the whole thing. And he goes, Ty, and Ty Van Berkeley had played in Japan, went from AA to going to Japan, had never played in the big leagues. And he goes, Ty, you're getting the call up to the big leagues. And congratulations. And I was so excited for him. I was like, Max, thank you so much for having me here. I'm hugging Ty, and Ty's so excited. He can't wait to tell his wife and kids. And he goes, and Eddie, you're going with him. And I was like, what? I was ecstatic. I was going nuts. So I call my dad, right? I call my dad, Dad, they just called me up to the big leagues. And he goes, why? And just like this 3-second silence, right? And I'm like, because they call me to the big leagues. They just lost like 10 in a row or 9 in a row, West Coast, East Coast trip. I'm going to the big leagues. And he goes, I don't know if you're ready or not. My dad would always tell me, when I signed professionally, he had signed for a $2 visa from Cuba. That's what he signed for. The first offer that they had made me was like a $200,000 offer, which I told my parents, whatever they offer, I don't care if it's a ridiculous amount, we're going to say no. We're going to say no to the first 2 offers. We're just going to say no. That was my game plan. When they left from that offer, before I signed professionally, my mom closed the door on them, gave them the Danish and everything that they had given us back. And she did a great show. My dad said, I signed for a $2 visa. And he always told me, he goes, it's easy to get to the big leagues. It's hard to stay. Always told me that. And I didn't understand it until I was then told you're going back to the minors later on in my career. But he was right. He goes, I don't know if you're ready defensively because they had just moved me a year and a half before that to third base. So am I ready defensively? I wish I would have known more defensively. I wish I would have known more offensively. But one thing I can say is it made me stronger. The failures that I had in big leagues made me stronger. He was right because he knew me and he had seen me. And for that, I'm always grateful for the honesty. And but I got to the big leagues, and Buck Rogers, who was the manager in the big leagues, said, hey, I don't have to explain to you anything about the big leagues. You know all of this. You grew up around it. I think that was the easiest part for me, is adjusting at major league level. But I still had to keep my promise to my brother on that first pitch slider that I got. And I think I created a sort of a reputation of, wait a second, this kid's hunting the fastball the whole time. He's going to swing at anything. After that, they threw me another slider. It was a ball, another slider, another ball. And next thing you know, 2-1, 3-1, 4-1. I took the walk. But the next at bat, I was able to hit a double the other way on the ground.
Yeah, very impressive debut. 3 at-bats, 2 hits, a walk, 3 runs batted, and 3 runs scored. I don't think I could get that much better for your first game.
Yeah, I thought the big leagues were easy after that. I was like, this is easy. Lights are better. Pitches are more consistent. And lo and behold, buckle up, because the rest was there were some really good memories there, but I really struggled early on, and I ended up hurting my elbow as well, and ended up having elbow surgery from that.
Yeah, I was actually just going to mention that. I was going to ask between the eye issue that you had, the elbow issue that you had, you got some, I think, really great nugget from your dad. Just, were you ready or not? And in hindsight, did you feel like you should have stayed in the minors for at least another season or two before you were called up? Because it seems like you never really were able to grab any consistency once you reached the majors at the 1993.
I think the hardest part for me, and I said it almost at the beginning, was I didn't play travel ball. I didn't play on teams, so I really didn't know what position I was going to be at. I got to Florida State. I was a center fielder. Played there my freshman year, then moved over to first base because of the necessity of the team. Did well at first base. But then I got drafted as an outfielder, moved to third base, and then because of the elbow issue, moved to first base, then back to third, then to the outfield, So I was all over the place defensively. I am so happy that there were no outs above average or any data like that, because my range would have been terrible. My jumps would have been terrible. I don't know if I would have gotten the 13 years in, because the defense was subpar. Offensively, I was inconsistent early on because I was putting a lot of focus on the defense. The offense suffered. I struggled. There was a game in Minnesota where I made 3 errors. I think it was in 3 innings. And it just seemed like every ball was coming towards me at third base, and I was getting bombarded by it. I did not feel confident, and that's something that I had lost. I'll tell you this, though, the day that I got called up to the big leagues, the first thing I said, one of the first things I was thinking is, I think I'm going to lose my rookie eligibility. Man, I'm not going to be able to be rookie of the year next year. That's what 23-year-old, that's what I was thinking. I shouldn't have been thinking that way. Instead of just taking it one day at a time and having fun. I learned that later on after I came back from Japan. And I know you guys, I skipped a little bit, but I learned that if I'm going to play the game, I'm going to play it my way. And my way is I'm going to play it, not work it. And that means I'm going to have fun doing it.
Yeah, no, you didn't skip too far ahead. We're going to chronologically get you updated here. But I wanted to ask, so we've seen some, I think, incremental changes in the game over the course of the last 15 to 20 years. And I think this is a residual effect of how great those hitters were towards the tail end of the 90s and the early mid 2000s. We've seen a lot of changes here in the game. The game's kind of become analytically driven, very three true outcome game. We always talk about this with Tim when we have him on, our dear friend. We've seen a lot more changes in the field, as well as the increasing number of defensive shifts, which I think if you were to have gone into an organization today, stuff like that and strategy incorporated into the game like that, I think would have helped you out, considering you think that your weakest point when you reached the majors was your defensive ability and you weren't ready. So for players today who are reaching the majors with those things in mind, what do you think is the hardest part of the transitional phase now as opposed to then?
You're getting evaluated on a lot of stuff that was never quantifiable. And now all of a sudden it is. And you're trying to fix, now you know exactly. And because of it, sometimes it makes it easier. You're able to fix those things. I think the hardest thing right now is the velocity on the offensive standpoint. We're seeing a lot of swings and misses. The strikeouts are at an all-time high. There's more the strikeouts than hits. The game has evolved. It's changed. Hitting has evolved. It's definitely changed. But I think the hard part is if you can't hit the fastball at this level, you're going to get weeded out in a hurry. You're going to be exposed. The data that we have as analysts now to be able to broadcast a game, to evaluate players, if you're in an organization, ridiculous. I was in 2013 as the coach for the Houston Astros, and I was there with the decision sciences department, and Sig Mejdal was the guy that was running that department, who now is the assistant general manager for the Baltimore Orioles. And he had an unbelievable department where we were trying to acquire data. The data has been acquired, and now it's being implemented. You see the philosophies and being able to, are we going to bunt with the runners at first and second in the 8th inning, in the 9th inning, depending where you are in the lineup. There's data that supports that. And managers are able to use that data to explain to the media why they did not execute a bunt, not. Same thing, hit and runs are pretty much the same breed. We don't see that anymore in the game. At one point, we thought the Oakland Athletics had it right with stolen bases, not stealing, not giving away outs. That sort of went over the wayward because we're still stealing bases. But at the end of the day, I do not recall as a hitter seeing a middle reliever throw 95 plus consistently. It used to be more, okay, the middle reliever is the two-seam guy trying to get the double play, throwing an 85 mile per hour sinker with an 89 mile per hour fastball. It's all about velocity and velocity up in the zone The game is different, and we all have to adjust to it.
Yeah, it's all about adjustment at this level at this point. Now, we've had some other baseball players on, and they always said the toughest thing for them as far as a pill to swallow was the first time they got traded. You, however, get traded to one of your hometowns. You get traded from the Angels to the Reds. So were you excited there, or was it like a shell shock? Like, I can't believe the Angels are trading me.
No, I knew the Angels had to trade me because I had just come from an injury, shoulder surgery on the left shoulder, and I did not have one at-bat during spring training. And one thing, having grown up in the game and studied the game, I knew that they could not send me down. They could put me on the disabled list at the time. Now we call it the injured list. But they could have put me on the disabled list, but instead they wanted to send me down to the minors. And I looked at Billy Pavese and I said, that's not happening. I think any other player would have just said, okay, I'm going down the minors, rehab, start AAA, and go from there. I'm like, no. The only way you're going to have to then trade me. I didn't want, we had Marcel Latchman as a manager there. And the last time I had gone into the big leagues, he had told me that I was never going to hit at the major league level. So why would I want to play for a manager that tells you you're not going to hit at the major league level? So I just said, no, I'm not going to go to the minors. I'll probably never see the big leagues again with Marcel Latchman here. I'm not going back to the minors. That's not happening. That being said, I got hurt in winter ball, by the way. That's why I had a bad shoulder that year. I rehabbed. I was ready to start playing. They ended up trading me to Cincinnati Reds for Will Pennyfeather. The only thing I had to accept was assignment to minor leagues. So, and I said, okay, I'll do that. Because I know I can hit at the minor league level and I'll get to the big leagues. And hit I did. And I was able to get back to the big leagues. And unfortunately for me, I ended up getting a fastball to my head in Cincinnati, in Minnesota. Mike Trombley, if I'm not mistaken, was a fastball. It was like a 93, 94 mile per hour fastball. I guessed curveball. Remember, I can't see spin that well. I got hit, had major concussion. At the time, we didn't have a concussion protocol. I was dazed and I struggled in the month of September to hit, and ended up losing my position, first base, for the next upcoming year. But to me, to play and wear a Cincinnati Reds uniform, I grew up being a Cincinnati Red because my dad was a Cincinnati Red, started and ended up his career there. I was born there. Is one of my most cherished moments in my baseball career.
Yeah, you overcame a lot, and I know your career probably didn't go as well as you would have liked it to. And again, you couldn't find any real consistency just because of the injuries. But you kept at it, and a lot of people, I think, would have folded in that situation. We've had people on who reached the majors, who just had a cup of coffee of success in the majors, and while you never really were able to develop consistency, you were able to have some longevity. So kudos to you. I don't think that's something that you should just kindly discard. But now we'll get to your time in Japan. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. You played for the Hanshin Tigers?
Absolutely right. Nice
How was
job.
your time in Japan? Yes, I tried.
No, my time in Japan was awesome. It was awesome. Short-lived. Again, spring training. I don't know if you guys have seen or not, Mr. Baseball with Tom Selleck.
Yes.
And
Great.
they had told me, watch it before you go. And whatever you do, multiply it by 10. And I was like, no way. Yeah. And I had gotten into spring training and I said, I'm going to immerse myself into the culture. I'm going to immerse myself into what the team is about. I want to be a team player. And I was convinced, you know what, maybe my time in the big leagues is over. My attempt of going back and forth, up and down in the minors was over. And it's now time to go make the money at the age of 31, if I'm not mistaken, there. So I opted to go to Japan. And during spring training early on, we were doing all these drills for like an hour before we even grabbed the ball or a bat. And one of them was the duck squats. And I'm doing the duck squats with the players, doing everything. Hey, having fun. And just all of a sudden, my cartilage in my knee and my meniscus and my knee was just aching. It was aching. I had I ended up having a small fracture in my right knee. I was like, this isn't good. And what's up now? ended up having an MRI in Japan. They ended up flying me out to the States. I ended up having surgery, and I was then let go and released. I was able to rehab, play winter ball, get stronger, and fortunately, the St. Louis Cardinals came calling again to get an opportunity as a non-roster invitee to spring training, and I had a pretty darn good spring training. And after that, and that's when I decided, and I told you guys about having fun and not working the game. Going to Japan was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I said, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it my way. And steal a line from Frank Sinatra. And I'm going to have a blast doing it. And having a blast, fortunately for me, was never seeing the minor leagues again as a Major League Baseball player.
Now, something that you could say that maybe only one other player, Joe McEwen, could say is that you owned Randy Johnson. Randy Johnson did not want to see you in the box. You had great success off of him. What could you attribute to that?
Yeah, Chipper Jones and Juan Gonzalez, pretty darn good success as well. But you're right. If you ask my wife about Randy Johnson, she'll say, I love Randy. Randy's the best thing that ever happened to me. Yeah, you know what, Randy, I was fortunate. I was fortunate to have a really, really good approach to Randy. I was able to pick up some of his habits that he was doing on the mound, and I was able to use it and take advantage of it. A lot of players knew what Randy was going to throw, but it's also having a plan when he's going to throw his fastball, when he's going to throw the slider, what area he's going to throw it in. Because at that time, with that height and that extension that he would also have on the 97 to 99 mile per hour fastball, it sounded like a freight train coming in, any freight train coming in through the strike zone, and you couldn't miss it. And you didn't want to get hit by it. It was an intimidating figure. So the first trick is don't look at him in the eye. Look at the glove, don't look at him in the eye, and then go from there. And I was fortunate to have not one, not two, not three, but 4 home runs off him. And it proved that I was not slider bat speed, if that makes any sense, because that's how it was before gauged by the scouts. He's got slider bat speed. He can't catch up to the fastball. I started catching up to that 97. Billy Wagner in spring training with the Reds one year, I caught up to a 99 mile per hour fastball up in the zone, and I hit it in Kissimmee way up. It was one of the farthest balls I had ever hit. And that sort of gave me confidence that I could catch up to upper 90 stuff.
So you mentioned homer. I want to mention this. You did play in the postseason, and you did have a postseason hit. And ironically enough, it was a pinch hit homer in the 8th inning of the 2002 NLCS, which you and Tony La Russa and the Cardinals would eventually lose to Barry Bonds and the Giants. But you do have that moment, and would you consider that one of your best moments overall in the majors, getting to play in a postseason series of that kind of magnitude? And even though you lost the game, yeah.
At that time, yes. It was, if I'm not mistaken, the game was 3-0 at the time when I came in to pinch hit, or it was 3-1, or I think it was 3-0. And Jason Schmidt was on the mound, and he was dealing. This is when he was dominating. And I told Tony, I said, I can hit this guy. And I knew that I was against left-handers pretty much primarily. And it came a pinch hit opportunity, and he put me in there, and I hit the living daylights out of a line. It left pretty darn quick. It was good exit velocity on it, good low launch angle, good exit velocity. We didn't count on those back then in those days. But that was definitely a really cool moment for me. It was unfortunate that we weren't able to come back and win that game. But I wouldn't say that was the best highlight of my career, the best single performance, even though it was a big pinch hit in the postseason.
How did the opportunity come about for you to join ESPN in 2006 for postseason coverage?
That one I owe a lot to Bart Swain. He is again, when you talk about being able to be, he's a sports media guy with the Cleveland Indians, and we were in spring training in Winter Haven, and we had to do some reads for the scoreboards, and we had to do a lot of things. And he realized, he's like, you'd be pretty good. You got personality. Maybe you'd be interested. And he goes, I hope we make the postseason, but if we don't, would you be interested in doing baseball tonight? And ESPN, I got some contacts there. And I said, that'd be awesome. Are you kidding me? Well, who doesn't watch baseball tonight? Back then it was the number one thing that we, as baseball players, that we watched. It was on twice a night. It was great. Sundays before Sunday Night Baseball. Are you kidding me? It'd be awesome, to hang out with Carl Ravitch and the guys. It would be great, John Kruk. And then I got traded from Cleveland to Seattle. So that sort of went away in 2006. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the year, I get a call from Bartz, and Bartz is like, hey, are you still interested in that? I said, absolutely. And I ended up getting a call from Jay Levy at ESPN, who no longer is there. And he was the one that asked me, he goes, look, we'd love to have you in maybe for a few days. And I was all in on it. And I was just as nervous that first day doing that as I was getting a batter's box on my first at bat in the big leagues. That's how, when that red light turned on, I was like, oh boy, what am I going to say now? But I decided just to be myself and have fun with it.
Yeah, and later on, you end up coming back to ESPN. But in between there, how did you get into coaching for Puerto Rico and then ultimately at the major league level?
Well, in 2007, there was no winter ball. 2007, 2008 season, there was a break in winter ball in Puerto Rico, and I owe a lot to winter baseball. As I told you guys earlier, that's where my parents met. That's why my dad ended up in Puerto Rico. I owe a lot to the Puerto Rican Winter Baseball League. Now it's called the Roberto Clemente Winter League. And that year they did not play. There were a lot of players that were left without making any money. There were a lot of players that were left without being able to go work out without coaching. And I decided to start a program called the Winter Training Program. Me and my wife, Mirba, who is a major part of the success of the Winter Training Program for that year, we ran it. And we went to Major League Baseball and the Players Association, and we said, look, we need to try to help out at least 60 professional players. They can be from A-ball, AA, AAA, and even major leaguers get their workouts in. And we did it at the Iran Bithorn Stadium, where the WBC's been held, where the Expos have played, where we saw the Cleveland Indians and Minnesota Twins were the last team to play there. So we had that facility, and lo and behold, we didn't have 60 players. We had 124 players at one time dress up there, and it was a major success. Major leaguers, minor leaguers, from Yadier Molina to Carlos Delgado to Javier Vasquez, you name it, they were there. Pujols went and worked out there. It was an unbelievable program. It was awesome. And then the next year, all of a sudden, winter ball's back. And we're like, okay, now we don't have a stadium. What do we do? And I was fortunate that the Leones de Ponce, which were a team in Puerto Rico, in the southern part of Puerto Rico, Jose Cruz had left the team for special personal reasons for managing. And they called me literally the day before the season started. And a lot of players, because I had run the winter baseball program and everything, they already knew me. We ended up winning the championship that year. Then lost the next year. But then I went back, managed another year for Santurce that I had played for, the team my dad played for, and won the championship there. So the 3 years that I managed in Puerto Rico, ended up winning 2 out of the 3 years. And that gave me a little bit of the bug of, getting back into the uniform side of it. And the organizations saw potential maybe in me being able to help out as coaching, potential manager in the future. And that's when the Miami Marlins, the Florida Marlins at the time, were calling. And I would say no. I really enjoyed my time with my family. I really enjoyed the time at ESPN, but they made it for an offer that I couldn't refuse at the time. And I ended up making a family decision and going to the Florida Marlins as the head coach.
Yeah, it's a grind for the coaches, no doubt about it. And who knows? I think we might see you as a manager real soon. How much was your social media and phone blowing up about 2 winters ago when you were in some serious talks to potentially be the manager of the New York Mets.
Dude, crazy, man, crazy. Because I have a few friends of mine that are like diehard Mets fans. I mean, diehard Mets fans, and it's ridiculous to the point. And back home in Puerto Rico, and and those are between Ricky, Juani, Omar, all those guys that are my buddies over there. They were like trying to get all the inside scoop, and I would be just pretty quiet about it. It was an honor to be part of the process. I was receiving so much help from an inner system that and friends that I really had developed to be able to go through this interview process, and I thought it was really neat, and I was pretty close to getting it. So I'm grateful to the Mets organization for giving me that opportunity to be able to at least show what I've learned and the experiences that I've had. But I'm really happy also where I'm at. And, that's one thing that to me, family comes first. And it's very important to me. One of the major reasons why I left coaching at the time is because my kids were young and I wanted to be I wanted to be a dad. I want to be a dad. I wanted to see them grow up through elementary school. Fortunately now my oldest is graduating this year, going to college next year, IU. Here we come, Bloomington, Indiana. But
Congrats.
Thanks. But it's not only being a dad, being a husband. And as I told my wife, I said, you didn't sign up to be a single mother. You signed up, to be a wife and a mother, and I want to be part of that journey too. So I'm really excited of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, and what they say these days is baseball tonight is just one step away from Major League Manager. Ask Buck Showalter, ask Alex Cora, ask Aaron Boone.
Yeah.
Dusty Baker. You can go on and on.
But Dusty Baker had a little experience before then.
He had a little experience, but still, you came back, you stay right there. You got David Ross. I mean, so many that are it's a step away. I think it's really interesting because as a manager, you are the face of the franchise, not once, but twice a day with the media. You have to deal with the media before the game, after the game. You're the voice. You're also the voice to the 26 men that are participating in the game, plus the coaches that are helping you out. You have to delegate and have their trust as well. So there are a lot of moving parts to being a manager besides just making the in-game decisions. And I think that's the neat part. If you don't like people, managing is not on your side. But if you do like people and you love the game, you have a chance. And that's the part that's interesting to me. You have to be able to understand that the fans and the game of baseball is bigger than anything else that makes the game so worthwhile.
So you returned to ESPN back in 2014. You returned to the studio and game analyst. Since then, you've also done work with Sirius XM Radio. So did you have any reservations about your transition to first television and then ultimately doing radio? Because I think there's kind of a little bit of a curve there. I think some former players and some people kind of translate a little bit better than other people. So again, did you have any reservations there? Did anybody give you advice? How long did it take you to feel comfortable in front of a camera and doing stuff like that?
No one's ever asked me that. That's why I'm shaking my hand. I leaned back. I was like, okay, he's got me on that one. I did. But I'll tell you this. Doing the leadoff spot for Sirius XM, by the way, let me plug it about while I'm at it, right?
Absolutely.
9, right? And it's, in the mornings with Steve Phillips, who I worked with also at Baseball Tonight and helped me out immensely. It's made me better. It's made me a better analyst. One, because we get to talk baseball and we get to cover it on a daily basis. So even if I'm not on the show, I am still. I'm an avid fan of the leadoff spot before I was even on. I mean, I was listening to it, going, because this is where you get your homework. This is where you're driving in the morning, taking the kids to school. And I was listening to the leadoff spot, and there were times that I would drop off the kids, I'd park the car, and I'd stay until the break. And then I go into the house and I turn it on my app, and so I'm listening to it all the time. And when I saw that Todd Hollingsworth, we actually swapped places. We switched places because I was doing ESPN and I was broadcasting games for ESPN, and I was broadcasting games for the Miami Marlins. And then that year in 2014, I think it was 14 or 15. It was like 16 if I'm not mistaken. I was broadcasting games, and all of a sudden Holly takes over for the Marlins. I was out because I had to make a decision between Fox or ESPN. I decided to go with ESPN full time. I said, I can't do both, man. I was getting worn out. But then I was like, wait a second, there's a spot on the leadoff spot. Holly and I swapped. And I believe it's made me a better analyst. I believe it made me a better analyst in game, because everything that I've covered in the mornings, I'm ready. That's my homework. That's my prep time for the next game. And when I am with two baseball informative geniuses in Carl Ravitch and Tim Kirchin, as I'm honored to be a part of guys that I grew up watching on TV, and we get to talk baseball, I better be on my A game. And radio's helped me be on that A game. It's given me the information. The producers on the SiriusXM channel are phenomenal. Tara, Eric, shout out. And again, it's just because they prepare you. They prepare you for the rest of the day. Conversations that I could have at a coffee shop. I could go to Versailles and grab a cortadito and a Cuban sandwich here in Miami and talk shop to the baseball fans there, because of that preparation. And because we don't have baseball tonight every night, it's on Sundays. You need your morning fix in baseball. You need your afternoon fix. I can always go there, but I'm ready because of the information that I acquire.
Yeah, and I always love when your guest host is the voice of Monday Night Raw, Adnan Virk, and you're talking about broadcasting games. Adnan, he said, you got to ask Eduardo about how difficult it is to broadcast these celebrity softball games. He said every time there wasn't a ball hit and play, you have to reset as if the bat was just about to start.
Reset. Oh, that reset. And then the game's over and you're still there for another hour and a half afterwards. So Adnan is a friend of the show. Did he ever tell you his last broadcast there? He did it in flip-flops. Also, he did it in sand. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's unbelievable. I cannot be more grateful again to the opportunities that I've received after my playing days, and it's all due to the fact that ESPN believed in me, not once but twice, because I went to coach. As I said, I went to do my master's in coaching to come back and be better in TV. And they've given me the opportunity to broadcast games, which I've fallen in love with in a major way. And to be able to be a part of the game and to see the game as a son of a major leaguer, as a major leaguer, first as a student athlete, then a major leaguer, then a major league coach, then a major league analyst, before the coach, a major league analyst in the studio, then a coach, then a major league analyst during the game, then do radio. Wow. To me, it's so rewarding, because to sit back and be able to just see baseball from different vantage points makes you appreciate the beauty of this game.
Yeah, and you got to work with incredible people, of course, and great broadcasters. And because you worked with Adnan, your wife gets the inside track on his Oscar picks every year. It's from what I was told.
Wow, you guys are really getting some inside scoop. Yeah, and you know what the funny part is? I still probably have that text right here. from Mirabal. And the Oscars were last Sunday, right? So Yep, they were 2 Sundays ago. And one of the, okay, here it is. And here's the text in Spanish. Interpret and translate after. Adnan se cayó en las 2 primeras. Nos vamos por la triple corona hoy. No vamos por la triple corona hoy. Meaning, Adnan missed the first 2 picks. We are not going for the triple crown today.
Wow. Oh boy.
Can't make this up. It's right there. Can't make it up.
He's too busy these days. He has 6 jobs. He can't focus on his movies.
6 jobs, 6 kids. He's got. I'm telling you, I don't know how Iman does it. Again, he's a beast.
He also said that you're a big fan of his co-host on Change Up, Scott Rogalski, and at the celebrity softball game, he said you were like, have him show you baseball cards. What was funny is Adnan leaves that year. The next year, Scott is playing in the game for a Change Up, and I said to Adnan, because I was working on the show with him, I said, I don't understand. Why didn't you want to take the opportunity to be the first guy to go from broadcasting the game to playing in the game the next year? That would have been very funny.
Yeah, that would have been really funny. And again, Scott Rogalski is a big-time Mets fan. And because of my daughter having played the IQ game and everything that he had, it was a no-brainer to have him on. And then to have his card collection, it was great. Scotty's awesome, very witty, just phenomenal. This year, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. It's going to be a Kirchin show for the celebrity game. So Tim Kirchin, who had played in the celebrity softball game in DC,
yes,
will actually be taking over the analyst job for me. So I think it's going to be great. It's going to be cool.
I think we need to see you at the next NBA celebrity basketball game playing.
Geez, let me know. You got to give me at least 7 months anticipation. I need the heel. I need to fix my heel and my hamstrings. And I have not even taken a jump shot in a while. But I'll be the muscle down under. I'll be the muscle down under.
Yeah, we'll take some
that would be great
right now for that. Yeah, no, it definitely would. Last point here. You took us through your really long, extensive career in baseball, and you certainly dedicated your life to the game. We would want to mention here at the end, last year when everything was kind of shutting down, we've now been in the midst of this pandemic now going on in the 2nd year. You got to do some Korean baseball broadcasting. And I think for a brief period of time there, the work that you were doing with Carl Ravitch and what ESPN was doing, we had no baseball, but we had something. We had a little bit of that something. So, kudos to you. You guys were able to pull that off.
Waving the flag.
And it was very, very different, very, very different. A very big culture shock. We got to learn more about the Korean leagues there, but
doing games at 2 a.m. from your house.
Yeah. How was that, doing all that?
Guys, I'll tell you what, the wake-up call was, first week was like, all right, I got this. It was hard. It was a little tough, but you know what? We were so appreciative because we knew that everybody was home. There was no broadcasts of any sort all around the world. This was the only broadcast that people had worldwide, live, and we were able to bring that to them. And I'm gonna take this with you guys, and I know we're in the podcast here, but this right here is I started this and I had it behind me, and it was my wife's idea of being able to have the map of the world and pin the places that people were watching from. And one thing is, this is the United States right here that I'm pointing at. This was, yes, we knew they were seeing, but look at South America. Yeah. People were watching in South America. Look at Africa. People were watching in Africa. Europe. People were watching in Europe. Go to Asia, right here, Thailand. People were watching there. They were tweeting back at me. They were, and by the way, look where I have it. This is how important it is. I got the selfie with the president, Doug Glanville, and Carl Ravitch in Cuba right above that. I value the reach that the KBO was able to make at least people's day just a little bit better during that time, and just a distraction from the stress that a lot of people were having. Me being able to be in this room where I'm doing this interview with you guys from and podcast from, I think it's phenomenal. I really do. I'm very, very appreciative for ESPN allowing me and allowing Carl and the rest of the crew and the producers, the people behind the scenes that were losing sleep. I was getting up at 3:30, but the producers were up way before that. The directors were up way before that. So there was no time to complain during this pandemic. We were just grateful that we weren't out of a job. A lot of people lost their jobs, and for that we were always humble about it, and we were appreciative of the opportunity.
Now, last question here, because you just mentioned it. When ESPN comes to you and says, we want to have you in Cuba for this historic broadcast, for this historic game in spring training, what was your reaction, obviously coming from Cuban descent?
I'm in. That was my reaction. The icing on the cake was, oh, by the way, you're going to interview the President of the United States, Barack Obama, also. That was, come on, man, you don't write stuff up like this. And I was able, I didn't know what I was going to ask him. I really did not. And I wanted to, and they were asking, so what are you going to ask? And I was like, I still don't know. And the thing is, no one at the network really even told me this is what you have to ask, because my seat there to be able to ask him, I think, was a unique vantage point of having two Cuban parents, my family still from my dad's side there, me being able to spend time with my cousins who drove 9 hours from Ciego de Avila to La Habana to be there, and not being able to go to the game. And so I had a very unique perspective of understanding how odd and rare that environment was. My grandfather was a major part of me in my upbringing, from my mother's side. Because my dad played, mom would always be my dad. And so my grandfather was the one that I soaked up the history of the game. He was a major baseball nut. That's where I learned the history. That's where I learned the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the early 70s was from my grandfather. And because of that, I'm very, I consider myself at least very well educated on it and the history of Cuban baseball. And he would always tell me that ballpark right there was the grandest ballpark he had ever been when he was a kid, when he was young. And all of a sudden, for me to see the President of the United States in the ballpark where my grandfather told me about growing up, again, the leader of the free world in a country, in an island that is not free, you can't get bigger than that. You can't. And I think that's what put everything into perspective of saying, wow, man, that probably was the best baseball moment I ever had. And I wasn't even wearing a uniform. I was wearing a guayabera. That was awesome.
An exceptional, historical, significant moment. I think it was the perfect way to end this. Eduardo, we thank you for giving us a little extra time. We know kind of took a little bit extra, but
this was a 15-minute interview. I thought this was a 15-minute podcast.
No, we fooled you. We had you hook, line, and sinker. I want to one more time correct myself. Your Hall of Fame father and your Hall of Fame godfather are both still with us. So I hope my first impression, yes. I hope I recovered from that.
All right. Thankfully,
they are still with us. Thankfully, you joined us. We had a really fun time doing this. Thank you again. We give our guests the last words. If there's anything else you would like to share, promote. But I mean, it's really hard to top the historical significance of that moment in Cuba with the President of the United States. So I guess maybe I'll ask you here for your final words. What was something that Barack Obama said to you in that moment that stand out in your mind? And thanks again for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Well, the first question I actually asked it on my cousin's behalf. And it wasn't about us, our cousins, but it was more about, their children, as they wanted to know how that visit was going to change their children's path moving forward. I thought he answered it brilliantly. But the second question was the one that really got me, where I tried to bust his chops a little bit by asking him and telling him, look, I've seen you throw out the first pitch in a game before. By the way, it wasn't good, guys. And he knew where I was going with it. And literally right there, he stopped, put his hand on my shoulder, and said, not everyone has a Hall of Famer for a dad, man. Not everyone has a Hall of Famer for a dad. So he knows. He did his homework. Look, it's baseball. Every day we're gonna see things that we've never seen before on the playing field. That's the beauty of the game. We don't know who's gonna win tonight. It's not as predictable. We don't know who's gonna have the bat in their hands in the batter's box when the game is on the line. It's not always going to go to the quarterback. It's not always going to go to your best shooter if you're a basketball player. It's not always going to be passed to the best slap shot guy. It could be the 9-hole hitter. It could be the guy off the bench. It could be your day. It could not be your day. That's what I love about the game of baseball. It's an equal opportunity for those that are there in uniform and eligible to play the game that day.
No doubt about it. So that's going to do it here for this episode of You Know I'm Right for our very special guest, Eduardo Perez, and for my co-host, Joe Calabrese. I'm Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm Right.